Hello and welcome. I'm Laura Briggs with the Vegan Fitness Runner podcast, where I'll be talking all things running, health and fitness, and what it means to be an active vegan. Dr. Minil Patel is my next guest, aka Dr. Iron Junkie. He's a bodybuilder and an animal rights activist who is walking proof that vegans can be shredded. He's a member of the Plant-Based Health Professionals and a Climate Games ambassador, and he's got an in-depth knowledge of plant-based nutrition and medicine. Dr. Minil Patel, hello. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Manil, we were just talking before I pressed record on this podcast about how busy your life is. You are super busy. Not only are you really into your fitness, but you're also a working GP as well. Life must be very, very frantic at the moment for you.
Yeah, I don't even have kids or anything, so I can't imagine how it is for people that have to juggle more things than this. But yeah, so I'm actually in my final year of GP training. I've done all my exams and everything. I've just got to get a few things just signed off, and then come August I'll be a fully fledged GP. But yeah, I've been a doctor for 8 years, so life's been busy for as long as I can remember. I've always had something on the go, and then I guess now it's all this extra stuff with kind of veganism and running on plants and ambassadors for various other things, plant-based health professionals, climate games, which we'll come on to. We'll talk about those things as well. But yeah, it's a lot of things going on.
A lot of things going on. Obviously, strength, fitness training, health, fitness, diet is all really what you're into. What first got you into the fitness?
It's a good question. I mean, growing up, I was always sort of an active kid, but I was never competitive and top of I wasn't always the one that was kind of going to football games and things like that. But then in secondary school, I remember I was always sort of above average. I'd be in the rugby team, but not quite the A or the B team. I wouldn't be up there. And I just remembered, even though I was really active and could run and stuff, I felt really weak, and I was quite skinny, really, really skinny actually. And I struggled to sort of gain weight. Whereas people around, kids around me, because I went to an all-boys school, guys were getting stronger, and I was just kind of Jesus, why am I not getting stronger or anything? And this is back when I had a omnivorous diet, so I wasn't vegan or anything like that, before people want to blame veganism. I grew up eating meat, a lot of dairy as well. I was drinking milk 3-4 times a day. It was a lot. But yeah, I just decided that, I had enough of being the skinny kid, and sort of got into weightlifting sometime in secondary school. Not really seriously or anything, just going to the school gym to lift weights, trying to bulk up, fill up my t-shirts a bit. But it was really when I got into medical school, did kind of my appreciation for the health aspect of kind of strength training and fitness really take off. But again, I was more into weightlifting, powerlifting, just getting stronger. I wasn't, cardiovascular exercise wasn't really something I enjoyed, and I kind of only did when I really need to lose body fat. I didn't really do it as a kind of fitness pursuit. It was more about the weights and just getting stronger, getting bigger, and that's all I was really doing. So that's what I first got into it, really. I was sick of being skinny, I guess. And yeah, even though I enjoyed sports, it wasn't something I always did.
So having gone into the kind of bodybuilding side of things, building your strengths, getting bigger, you obviously then started to put on the bulk, I'm assuming. At what point did you think, okay, now I'm going to look at my diet? Can my diet improve my bodybuilding?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, again, in medical school, we're not really taught nutrition, so you have to do a lot of your own sort of reading around what's healthy eating yourself. You're kind of taught Mediterranean diet, but it's weird because when I got into strength and fitness kind of training and stuff, the kind of the common sort of theme was you needed to eat meat to be strong, and actually eating loads of meat was considered healthy by certain people and people I followed, really. So to me, that's what it was. I had to eat more meat, and it's weird because I concentrate on whole foods as well, like plants, but I just kept focusing on the meat. And I don't know whether it's because I was kind of brought in by looking at guys that are bigger than me, who are a lot of them were on steroids, but I didn't know that because I was quite naive at the time. but they attributed all their success to eating meat. So for me, that's what I considered healthy at the time, which is really interesting when you look at actually now, what I think now is completely different to what I thought then. Um, and even though, I was strength training and I was eating all this meat, I never considered that this meat might actually be bad for my health. Um, Again, which is strange because, you were told about the increased risk of colorectal cancer and gastric cancers with kind of processed red meat intake. We're taught about how if you're eating too many saturated fats, you can increase your risk of heart disease. We're taught this stuff at medical school, but no one really expects people to be eating that much meat anyway. But because I was training in the gym, I was. So it wasn't really until I sort of left medical school, started my first year training as a doctor, that I started looking at sort of vegan diets, and it wasn't for a health point of view at all. It was actually the ethical side of things.
Right.
So if you ask when did I really think about my health, like the nutrition side of my health, really, I've always sort of thought about it. I've always believed that you need to eat whole foods rather than junk food, and that's been what I've been doing since university, really focusing on whole foods, and junk foods would be like 10% of my diet, really just as a treat. But if you compare my diet now to what it was, let's say 10 years ago when I was in university, really, 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 really different. Like half my plate back then would have been meat heavy protein, and the other kind of half would have been mainly vegetables, and sometimes sweet potato. I was quite low carb as well, which was, again, something that no runner should try and do, but I was very low carb. And even so in strength training as well, you don't want to be low carb for majority of the time. Like when people do low carb diets, they're essentially trying to lose body fat, and they think that they've been fed this kind of belief that if you eat carbs, you're gonna the carbs are gonna break down the sugar, and the sugar is gonna lead to insulin going up, and insulin makes you fat. It's all incorrect thinking. It's not the carbs that are making people fat. It's the excess of calories and being sedentary, and it's really that being in the chronic calorie excess that makes people fat. But I believed it was a carb, so I was low carb at the time as well. Very different to what I do now, as we'll come to talk about. But like I said, to answer your main question, when did I really think about the health aspect of nutrition? It wasn't really until I was already vegan that I sort of started thinking about the health benefits of a plant-based diet.
I mean, that's a total U-turn, isn't it? Your original diet from when you're, trying to build muscle and get big to what it is now. Yeah. Did you find back in the early days, people were promoting to you that, that very heavy meat-based diet because of this issue that vegans hear all the time about protein and building muscle, and how can you get protein unless you're eating animal products? Was that the main driver, do you think?
I think it's precisely it. I think a lot of the bodybuilders have always eaten kind of lots of meat heavy diet, fish, chicken, beef, cows, I should say. They've been, and it's just been the thing that people have done because you do get protein from it. Interestingly, people did used to eat kind of beans, legumes and things as well because they contain protein, but there was this whole school of thought that plant protein is inferior and you need to eat a lot more of it to extract the same amount of protein, and it's just easier to eat the meat instead. So there's this whole belief that actually the quality of the protein in meat is higher, which now we know that actually, provided you're getting enough protein from the plants and eating a good variety of plant proteins, there's no difference in kind of the strength and muscle outcomes. And now we actually have the studies now that we didn't have back then. So I guess even the mainstream sort of thinking about surrounding plant protein is starting to change, which is really, really encouraging, actually, especially when we consider that more people need to be eating plants and more people need to be eating plant protein. It's really good that now we're getting studies coming through that actually showing, well, actually, if you eat plant protein and just plant protein, so if you're vegan, provided you eat enough of it, you can get the same sort of strength benefits and muscle gaining benefits as a omnivorous or a non-vegan diet. Which we just didn't have back in the day, maybe.
And did you see changes in your physique? I mean, you've always been fit, you've always been healthy. So, you could say if you were maybe a sedentary person who ate meat and then you went on a vegan diet and started exercising, there'd be obvious changes.
Yeah.
But you were always doing the fitness side of things. Did you then see extra changes when you transitioned to veganism?
Actually, no, which is interesting. I mean, it was easy. It was definitely, I found it definitely easier to stay leaner. I find that, if you're eating whole food, plant-based especially, you're less likely to eat a lot of it tends to be slightly lower in fat, that diet anyway. Even if you're eating nuts and things like that, you tend to be eating less calories overall than when I was omnivorous, and that's just because eating a lot of vegetables and eating a lot of legumes and stuff is filling. And beans don't have a lot of calories in them, even though they do have carbohydrates. It's quite a lot of fiber. So I found that actually it was easier to stay lean. Really, that's the only thing I noticed. I did notice that eating more carbohydrates gave me a lot more energy as well for my workouts, so I could push more. And if I did do running or any cardio, I could go for longer if I felt like I had more energy. Whereas on the lower carb diet, I felt like I was always struggling in the gym when I'd run out of energy a bit too quickly. Again, this is just my stories, and everyone's different. There are some people that can work out on low carbs and stuff as well. But if we look at the theory, your muscles get their energy from stores of glycogen, which is essentially carbohydrates stored in your muscles, and you need that. I'm sure because as a runner, we kind of have to, before a race or something, you have to make sure your muscles are saturated with those carbohydrates, with glycogen, because when you do a hard run, your body will call on that and those energy stores to produce energy and contract. And if you eat a low carb diet, you're going to be doing yourself some disservice when it comes to fitness and performance. So yeah, mainly I did physically, I guess, staying lean, more energy into workouts. I noticed my skin was better and digestion was better. Those are the two main things I noticed, actually. That digestion was definitely better when I was eating a plant-based diet as opposed to a lot of meat. I never got heartburn ever again. I remember I had every now and then with if I had too much dairy, if I had too much red meat, I'd get heartburn. And actually, interestingly, milk didn't agree with me towards the end. Just about 2 years before I went vegan, I remember cutting out dairy milk, like drinking it and putting it in my oats altogether because it was giving me digestion problems. So I ended up having, at the time, it was almond milk, which I never get anymore. But I used to have, that's the first plant-based milk I ever tried, and my digestive issues went away. So that was interesting as well.
That's such a common thread. I hear this all the time, people having issues with dairy milk, and then as soon as they switch it out, they see so many benefits.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, just to interrupt. I mean, so many people are lactose intolerant. Like 70% of the general population tends to be lactose intolerant or close to, and then that number increases to almost 90% when you look at sort of Black and Asian populations. But people in China can rarely digest dairy milk. They just don't drink it. It's just not part of their diet, because and that's why soy milk is so prevalent there, because people have that instead. So it's no wonder that we're not supposed to be really drinking milk into our adulthood. We're the only animal that does. I don't think there's any animal out there naturally that drinks milk into adulthood. We're the only ones. So
does it frustrate you as a doctor when people come to you with certain ailments, or and you are trying to promote a vegan diet, in your personal life as well? Does it frustrate you that this isn't a more mainstream diet, that kind of the meat industry still has that hold over people, and it's obviously making people unwell?
Yeah, I think nutrition is complicated, and that's the thing. I say it's complicated because everyone's going to respond differently to different diets, and I think as much as I would love to promote a vegan diet to all my patients, I have to be sort of realistic, and I try and promote what I would call a plant-forward diet. So I try and meet people where they're at. So if they're eating tons of meat, getting them to go vegan is going to be impossible.
Yeah. So
I try and see if they can replace parts of their meat intake with, legumes and things as well, and see if they can increase their Normally I ask them to increase their vegetable intake. And if you ask them to increase the intake of some good stuff, then the bad stuff sort of gets crowded out.
By default.
But it's definitely, you're right, it is frustrating. And I think there's so many things that in life that are frustrating when it comes to kind of healthcare overall, and just how people think about their health. And I think in the UK, there's a lot less focus on preventative medicine, and it's a lot more reactive. Especially as doctors, we're very much taught kind of what medication to give a patient if this comes up. We're taught, what operation a patient might need for this, and it's all very much reactive rather than, okay, actually, if we focus on these preventative measures and really focus on them and educate young people with this sort of stuff, then that'll help. But also the information's out there, the education's out there, but also people have to want to be able to take it on board. And I think you have to create an environment where people want to be healthy as well. And I think the UK isn't the best at that when you compare it to some of our European like neighbors and other countries that have a more focus on sort of like physical activity, eating whole healthy foods, promoting people cooking their own meals and growing your own food. I mean, I don't grow my own food, but there's certain skills and things that are taught in other countries allow for people to live a more healthier lifestyle. Whereas here we've got a really big drinking culture. There's like new junk food shops opening up on every street corner. There's it's out of control in a way, and then we're wondering why people are so sick. That's what's frustrating. I don't get angry at people, and I don't get frustrated with people. I get frustrated with the culture and the messaging from the people who are essentially in power, like our governments and people who are educating the country and the population. I get more frustrated at them because they've got the power. If you legislated for healthy food to be subsidized and for junk food to be taxed and penalized and made it harder for people to access certain types of foods, if you just banned sugary beverages altogether, imagine what it would do to the country. And now people think that's sort of a nanny state, a big brother kind of statement. But if we're trying to make everyone healthier and live, healthier, longer lives and not, suffer with all these ailments that we're seeing, I can't see any solution apart from to legislate for it. But maybe that's a strong view.
It's really interesting, isn't it? It is it is such a culture of this country, and it's driven by massive corporations. It's driven by money, isn't it? And it's a huge frustration. I can only imagine in your shoes as a doctor, you see so much more of it as well. There must be times. I mean, we're all fallible, aren't we? There must be times when you struggle to stick to a diet that maybe meets your calorific needs, or you're just so busy. How do you cope with that on a day-to-day basis, given your busy lifestyle and what you do for fitness as well?
I mean, look, I don't pretend to be perfect at all. That'd be a crazy thing to do, and I don't try and put myself on a pedestal, and I don't say I'm on a diet. I say I live a lifestyle which is I care about my health and fitness, and I try and live a more healthy lifestyle where I try and make about 90% of my food choices quote unquote healthy. And I say quote unquote healthy because a single food by itself, I don't think it's unhealthy. If you had a can of Coke, full sugar, a can of Coke, it depends on the context and depends on your overall daily calories and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. That's what's going to decide whether something is really unhealthy or healthy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I try not to demonize a certain food, and because it creates sort of bad thoughts and stuff around food and everything, and can create food anxiety and eating disorders. And this is what we're all trying to avoid. We're trying people to have a good relationship with food and not worry too much. So I think education and being aware of what's going to be good for me and what's going to be bad for me is important, but then not beating myself up if one day I go, I've had a really tough day and actually I'm just going to have something that's a bit of a treat and not beat myself up for it. But I can't let that happen on a daily basis. Do you see what I mean? So where people fall into the trap is where they go, well, I'm cheated on my diet. Well, I don't want to say cheated on my diet, but I've eaten something that I consider unhealthy today. I'm just going to give up and just do this now every day. It's no point in me carrying on. So it's not allowing yourself to get in that kind of mindset and just being sort of reflective of what you're doing and be mindful of what you're doing. And I think creating an environment which you're going to succeed in is the most important thing. So for me, if I always prepare my breakfast the night before. So my breakfast is already prepared. It's an overnight oats and I don't have to worry about that. But I already know what I'm going to have if I don't prepare breakfast overnight, like on the weekend. I'm going to have warm oats. I'm going to cook them myself in the morning. So I have a plan of what I'm going to do. Similarly with kind of my shopping, I never buy any quote unquote junk food. I always buy foods that I know I'm going to have to cook myself and prepare myself and use. So like tofu, tempeh, beans, lentil-based pastas, lots of vegetables, fruit, sweet potatoes, normal potatoes, like white potatoes. I just buy stuff that I know I'm going to have to cook to eat if I want to eat. So there's nothing sort of packaged, apart from maybe if I want, I'll get like ready-made grains or rice, as those are kind of if I'm in a pinch and I'm in a hurry and I kind of need to heat something up, right? And if you do that and you just avoid buying all the junk stuff, then actually when you have those sort of cravings and stuff, it's harder for you to then give in to them because they're not around. Again, this is easier for me because I don't have kids that are like, or people that are around me that are eating that kind of stuff. So I don't have to worry about them eating theirs. But this is about that creating an environment in which you're going to stick to a plan. Yeah. And then actually it's having the plan. So I've been doing this for so many years that I don't need to write down what I'm going to eat. I don't need to count my calories and this kind of stuff. I don't need to do that. But some people might in the beginning, just to kind of understand more about food, understand what foods have what calories, what foods are going to keep them satiated and give them the energy they need for their workout. People need to learn about the food. I think if you don't know about food, then you're sort of going into it blind, and then you're more likely you're going to fail. And that's why people hire coaches, because coaches have been educated on this, nutritionists as well have been educated on this, and they can give people the right advice, but then you have to pay for that service. So having a plan is really important. So creating a good environment and having a plan, and then, like I said, not beating yourself up if things go wrong. And if you're busy, that plan is really important, because if you've planned to make your meals ahead of time. So I have a habit as well that I'll always make my own lunch. I'll never rely on the fact that I'd be able to pick something up at a shop somewhere, or I'll get something that's in the hospital canteen. I never do that. I've always got my own lunch, so I know what I've cooked. I know what's in it. I know it's going to keep me full, and it's that. I've just been quite strict with it since university, and I think it's just a habit that's now in me. So it's much easier for me because I've been doing it for years. I don't expect everyone to suddenly be able to change the habit and just stick to something. You have to sort of make these changes slowly until it becomes a routine, and then once you do that, then it's people be asking you how you did it, basically.
It's really important as well when you say about not demonizing foods, isn't it? I mean, we're all guilty of it. One day I might eat an entire bar of chocolate and think, oh God, but it's okay. I might be going out for a run that evening, so I can kind of justify it. But if I did it every day, that would be no good. So it's about having a balance, isn't it? And maybe recognizing that food isn't good for you. And I think if you have the knowledge of what's good and what's bad and what works with your body and what works against it, then you've got a better chance of steering clear of some of it. I love the idea, but by the way, of not having the stuff in the house. Yeah. Like you say, must be much easier for people without children.
Yeah.
There's always going to be some kind of snack hanging around if you've got kids, but the less processed food that we buy and the less ready meals and the lesser we eat, it just stands to reason, doesn't it?
I think you save money as well, because snacks are so easy to overconsume, and it's just so easy to keep just buying snacks, and if they're not there, then you're not going to do it. And I think it's just going back to eating the whole bar of chocolate thing. I think it's just being mindful, like asking yourself, why am I having this right now? Like, is it because I just feel like it and I just enjoy it? Or actually, is there something else going on? For a lot of people eat when they're stressed. People eat when they're sad about something. A lot of people struggling with mental health at the moment. As a GP, I see a lot of people struggling with mental health issues, and often food is a crutch for them. They eat it because it gives them that almost immediate sense of pleasure and happiness. So it's important, I think, to reflect on why it is you're doing something, because only then will you be able to change that behavior.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Do you find now, Minil, that people take your lifestyle, your vegan lifestyle, more seriously than they might maybe take my lifestyle because of your status as a doctor and a bodybuilder?
Yeah, interesting question. I definitely feel that. I definitely felt that because when I first went vegan, a lot of people. Firstly, I think just even as a man, there's something different about how vegan men are perceived against vegan women, which just says something about our society more than anything else. I think people have this view that vegans are like really soft, women that kind of just care about everything too much, and it's a very outdated, misogynistic kind of view. But that is a view that a lot of people sort of hold, whether they vocalize it or not. But then when they see that a man has gone vegan, they go, "Oh, okay, what's that about?" And then they might listen a bit more. And then they hear, "Oh, he's into fitness as well. Oh, he's got muscle. Okay." And they listen a bit more, and then they go, "Oh, he's a doctor. Okay, so he must know about health." So it's like I almost felt straight away that when I went vegan, it was going to be like I felt a responsibility to
use my voice to actually talk about this subject, because I knew that people would listen. And yeah, you're right. People definitely do listen a lot more to the fact that I'm a doctor, I'm in decent shape, and that I'm male as well. Unfortunately, that's true, but the fact that I'm male as well, because as you know, vegan men are outnumbered almost 3-1 by vegan women, or 2-1. Like there's double the amount, or at least, of vegan women than there are men. There are more and more men going vegan, but I think it's just something that, because of kind of like the masculinity culture and the whole kind of meat and masculinity thing, it takes a lot more for some men anyway to turn around and go vegan, whereas I think women tend to be more empathetic, more in tune with those sort of feelings, and are more likely to actually care for animals and then decide to ethically then go vegan, which is a whole other kind of podcast episode, that whole thing. But yeah, definitely, people definitely took it more seriously, the fact that I'm a doctor and into fitness, for sure.
I was going to ask you what the common misconceptions are that you hear surrounding your veganism. You kind of touched on it a little bit when you said about, the whole men-women thing, and that men are, perceived as, if you go vegan, you're perceived as maybe a bit softer, a bit weaker, a bit wetter, whatever the word you want to say.
I mean,
is that the kind of thing you hear mostly?
Yeah, I mean, it's worse than that. I mean, there's such homophobic undertones to kind of the way men are described. The whole phrase "soy boy" was coined to describe men that are not just vegan men, but like men who are a bit kind of softer. And homophobic language is used as well online. I've seen it, where people will use derogatory words, but "soy boy" is one that's most commonly used, and it's kind of point to the fact that soy products like soybeans and tofu and tempeh contain phytoestrogens, which are kind of structurally similar to mammalian estrogen, and estrogen is considered a women's or feminine hormone. So, that the whole kind of undertone is there actually, where people are not only being misogynistic but also homophobic when they're calling vegan men soy boys, and whether they admit to it or not, that's exactly what they're doing when they say that word. So we're trying to, as vegan men, we're trying to bring that word back to, we're trying to what's the word? We're trying to own that word and say, yeah, we are soy boys and we're proud. Because what it means actually is that we care, we're for the animals, we stand up for what is right. And I think, there's definitely that misconception that vegan men are weaker and softer and all this stuff, but it's just nonsense. We know there's vegan strong men out there, vegan powerlifters, vegan bodybuilders, people that are in like kind of the vegan athletes, but also it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're any of those things or not. You could be someone who's really, really skinny and doesn't like the gym or whatever. You're vegan because you care about animals, and you're taking an ethical stance, and you're doing something that's actually in the face of the masses. You're doing something that's not the mainstream, and I think that takes more courage than actually just going along with doing what everyone else is doing. I think everyone that's vegan and kind of vocal about it, especially, is doing something incredibly brave. I don't think it's something that should be kind of perceived that way, but people will always try to put down things that they, one, either they don't understand, or two, they're fearful of, or they're threatened by. And I think that's the main thing. Men are threatened by vegan men, not all men obviously, but like kind of that toxic masculinity culture are threatened by the very presence of vegan men, because how can men be empathetic? How can men be ethical and moral on this and stuff? And it's just, I think it just annoys some people, and then they lash out and they use these sort of derogatory terms to put them down. That's the main thing I see when it comes to this kind of online discourse and trolling and stuff. But yeah, there's loads of misconceptions about veganism we could talk about.
How do you deal with the trolls? I mean, you see it all the time, don't you? You're very active on Instagram, social media generally, and we've talked previously about the kind of comments you get, and some of them you've kind of spoken about outwardly, but you must get a lot behind the scenes that you don't talk about. I mean, how does that affect you?
I mean, I don't think it does anymore. I think it affects me more when I see people say stuff to other people that I like and know. Because I get accused of stupid things like, oh, you're on steroids, which is, I find really funny, because I know how kind of small, quote unquote, small I am compared to other bodybuilders and stuff. So I do not look like someone that does steroids. And if I did, I'd be very embarrassed because I'm not big enough to have been someone that looks like they've used steroids. But on pictures, I must look much bigger, and that's why people say, "Oh, you must be on steroids," or they just can't believe that as a vegan, I've managed to like hold on to the muscle that I build muscle compared to what I had before. Because I've definitely, I've been vegan for 7 years. I definitely got bigger on a vegan diet. I definitely got more shredded on a vegan diet, and then I just sort of maintained it. Now I just sort of very slowly build. I'm not trying to like bulk up even more now because I feel like I have to kind of tread the line between getting injured and then being sensible. So I don't really, I don't push myself as much as I used to anyway, and I'm quite happy at the size I'm at in a way. But yeah, I just sort of ignore the comments because I ignore a lot of the comments. If I'm in a bad mood, then I might reply and get into an online kind of back and forth. But I know that I can tell straight away if this person's going to be receptive to me actually having a discussion or whether they just want the attention of me giving them that back and forth. And eventually these people get bored. So if you don't reply, they get bored. If you reply, you're giving them what they want, and that's a reaction. So my advice to everyone actually is just to not respond. Because that if you do respond, it gives them what they want. And I don't take my own advice because I sometimes do respond, because it's really tempting to sometimes and just poke them a little bit and make them more annoyed. But yeah, social media.
That's what they want, isn't it? They want you to be annoyed.
That's true. But the thing is, I'm not annoyed. I'm more trying to poke them to see if I'll annoy them back. And they think they're winning by just. I think what they want is a reaction from me to get me annoyed. But I stopped being annoyed a long time ago because I just feel like people on social media will say anything for attention, and they're very unlikely to say it in real life. And it's really strange because everyone, when I meet so many people on a daily basis because of my job as well, and people just seem so like normal and reasonable in a way, and you can have a conversation with most people, and that's what you have to remember, that majority of people are normal people in real life, and they'll have a conversation with you in real life, whereas people that are online and being that vocal are usually the minority of people that are just very strange, have something going on in their life, things that probably aren't going right for them, that could be, and they're online kind of lashing out. I almost feel sorry for them. And if they express the desire to actually have a conversation, which sometimes they do, like sometimes they'll say something and then I'll go, why did you say that? Like, what made you say that? You don't know me, or, and then they might reply, and then you think, okay, well, now you're being reasonable. So what was that comment before? And that can sometimes happen as well. So it's really interesting. Sometimes if you reply, you'll get a reasonable response back, and you're like, okay, well, maybe we can have a conversation. But a lot of the time you can judge whether that's going to happen or not. And I think to save everyone time and stress, it's best just to ignore it and block and move on. And that's probably the best way to deal with trolls, actually block them and move on, because then they can't carry on. And if they're really rude, you can report them now, and they'll get their account taken away, which happens as well. Like on Twitter all the time, there are people that have been racist to me, there are people that have been homophobic, there be all sorts, and you just report them, and eventually their account does get taken down. So yeah, it's
very sage advice to ignore. I think sometimes that is the way, isn't it, to rise above.
That's the best way. Yeah.
Minil, what got you running? Because you weren't always a runner, were you?
Yeah, I mean, and right now I'm not running as well because I've pulled my groin actually. Not running, I pulled it while squatting, so I've kind of had to take a bit of time off. But what got me running? I think I was just at the point where I knew I had to do something because I was at the risk of becoming probably quite immobile and sedentary because of the work I'm doing. Like as a GP, you're basically seated for 8 hours a day. And I remember it was last year around April that Tom told me about running on plants, that they were going to be doing it in June. And during April, I'd been studying for an exam. So during like February, March and April, I'd been studying. So my step count had gone down because it's really hard to convince yourself that you need to go for walks when you've got a really big exam looming. And that's the whole thing about kind of life will get in the way and we need to kind of take care of ourselves. But I just basically neglected that because this exam was so important that I could not afford to fail. So I basically put all my time into just being at work. And if I wasn't at work, I'm at home studying. So that left me feeling quite, like I couldn't do anything. And then when Tommy told me about the running on plants, I was like, you know what, this is a perfect excuse to actually get me to run, to get outside. Because prior to last June, I'd only run 5K once in my life.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty amazing.
And that 5K was during COVID. I don't know if you remember in the first lockdown when everyone was running a 5K and then tagging 5 friends online to try and run a 5K as well.
That's right, yeah.
So someone had tagged me and I said, oh, you utter B word. I can't believe you've done this to me. I'm going to have to do this now because I've been called out online. And this was long before I, was using Instagram like I'm using it now. It was, it was very quiet on there, but I decided to then do it. And I did it in about 23 minutes, 49, 50.
Just very good.
I was surprised. My friends were surprised as well. They're like, oh, you did it in 20, people that never run 5K don't usually run it like that. But I was like, yeah, fine. And I did it in barefoot shoes as well.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, like mine did.
I did it in barefoot shoes and my calves were killing for days after. But I was really happy with that. I was like, you know what? I've just done 5K. I'm going to carry on. I think after that, I did a couple 1K and 2K runs and that was it. I just did not like running. But I walked a lot during lockdown. So then I never ran again. And then when Tommy told me about running on plants, I thought, okay, let me try. And I remember me and him did a Instagram live and he asked me at that time, what do you think your first 5K time is going to be on June 1st? And I said, oh, I'll probably get close to, 23 minutes like I did last time.
Yeah.
When I ran that 5K, I think about 2K in, I had a stitch and it took me 27 and a half minutes to complete and I was mortified.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. And 27 minutes might be good for some people, right? But for me, it felt terrible because I've run that fast.
Because you knew you could do it quicker.
Yeah, I knew I could do it quicker. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't got that much slower in the last 3 years. I'd heard Tommy's time was like 18 minutes or something. And I was like,
oh, his is insane. Nobody should compare themselves.
Well, that's the thing. People are getting less than 20 minutes, right? And I thought, well, I want to get that. And now I've realized I probably can't just because of, I'd have to train really hard for it. But then, did the whole running on plants thing during the month. I really, really enjoyed it. It really pushed me quite hard. It was like a new challenge. I had to change the way I did my weights training. So I we'll talk about kind of balancing the two in a second as well. But I basically changed things around. Then I did my 5K at the end. I think I got 22 minutes something. So I beat my previous 5K.
Wow.
And I was really happy that I made like a huge difference in that month. And I was like, wow, that's really good. I'll just carry on running and see if I can do a 10K. So I did my first 10K like a few weeks later. And I was like, oh, wow, I can run 10K. That's really good. Then I did a 10-mile trail run with a friend. And once I did a 10-mile trail run, one of my other friends was like, why don't you do a half marathon? And I was like, hey, steady on. I've only just done, the 5K and the 10K and now the 10 miles. He's like, well, yeah, half marathon is only 3 miles more. So I entered the Ealing half marathon, which is a pretty good trail. Not trail, but it's a pretty good course. And I did that in like an hour and 40 something. And I went in saying I want to get just sub 2 hours. So I'll be happy with that. I'm not a runner, by all means. So if I get less than 2 hours, I'll be pleased with that. I got an hour 42.
Turns out you are a runner.
I don't think so. I still don't think I'm a runner, but because I think I still need to get my technique kind of assessed and everything, which I do recommend people do. I haven't done it yet, but I think it's a good idea. But I think what I ended up enjoying was waking up on a Saturday morning and just going, oh, I'm just going to go out and I'm just going to run for about an hour, hour and a half, whatever. And it's that during it, you're sort of just alone with yourself, your thoughts, or you've got podcasts on, or you've got music on, but you're just working hard during that time as well. And then when you finish it, you get that sense of accomplishment as well. And I was like, oh, this felt good. And it felt good during that week on week and, racking up like sort of some good kilometers doing that. And yeah, I ended up really enjoying it. But yeah, it was just trying to balance that with weight training, which became quite difficult, because I think if you're someone that is used to training really hard in the gym, training your legs really hard in the gym, when you start doing something new like running, that's all going to sort of change, which I then found out.
Should I
talk about that?
Does it complement each other?
Yeah. So if you're someone that only runs, then doing some strength training will definitely give you some benefit, because it gives you sort of more control in your hip muscles, your glutes. Especially if you're doing single leg training, it will complement the running for sure if you've never done it before.
Okay.
And if you've always done strength training but you've never done cardio, then yeah, doing kind of running for the cardiovascular fitness aspects of it will definitely complement strength training, because help your lungs and heart work better in sync and improves your cardiovascular fitness. And if you're someone that's
only done strength training and no cardiovascular fitness, you definitely stand to benefit from that. But then it's about trying to become, if you want to become like that well-rounded athlete, and the term sort of hybrid athlete is becoming kind of the term that I've been hearing more and more of now, and more people calling themselves hybrid athletes. I don't call myself that at all, because I don't think I'm very good at both. You have to be sort of very good at strength training and very good at running to be in that bracket. And I'd say I'm half decent at strength training and I'm okay at running. But you sort of have to be able to balance the two, and if you can do that, then you can call yourself a sort of hybrid athlete, which people are like really good. You know, they're running kind of half marathons, ultra marathons, and they're very impressively strong in the gym. So balancing the two can be very difficult, and I think it definitely does complement it. So if you've never strength trained before, you definitely should do a bit for running, and if you've never ran before or done any cardio, you should definitely do some cardiovascular exercise if you're training in the gym, because I think you stand to gain the benefits of both sides if you haven't done either. But yeah, it's like finding that balance, which I'm still trying to do. You can't do a hard run the same day that you're going to train your legs.
Sure. Because
imagine doing like a sprint or a hard run. You've used up a lot of your energy. You'll be wrecked, yeah, and your muscles just won't recover. Your tendons won't recover. Your risk of injury just goes up. That doesn't mean you can't do like, let's say, a very easy run or a recovery run, like in zone 2 or something, where you're just sort of, the effort's not too high, it's there, but you're not sort of pounding away, like getting your heart rate up. You're just sort of doing a very easy run. You could probably do that on the same day as you might do some strength training. Or you can do like, if you're training, if you're running this on one day, later on in the evening, you could train your chest or your back, and that's fine. But what you don't want to do, which is what I did, is train your back, get really, really sore, and then the next day try and do a 5K for time. Because if your muscles are sore, you can't run properly. So
it's about alternating the muscles that you're working.
It's about alternating and finding a balance, and on the days that you're probably not running or just doing an easy run, around that time is the time you want to train your legs a bit harder, which if you're trying to look for strength training, you could do. But just understand that there will be a trade-off somewhere. You're not going to be an elite runner and an elite strength athlete as well. There are very few people that can do that, and they've been basically training for years and years and years. And so there is a way to build up to it, but you're not going to immediately do that, basically.
So, bar the current groin strain, can you give people some kind of insight into what your average day of training would look like?
If I give an average weekend, so like a Saturday or Sunday, so I normally wake up in the morning like 8 o'clock. I don't get up too late at the moment these days, because during winter I found it really hard, but during summer it's a bit easier. So I'll wake up, have like a sort of slow digesting simple carb meal, usually like a bagel, if I'm going to go for a run, bagel with some jam or something like that, a whole wheat bagel with jam, and then water. Just wait a few bit before I go out. I might have some beetroot juice as well. I've started doing beetroot juice.
I've heard about this. It's supposed to be good for performance, isn't it?
Yeah. So the beetroot basically increases the circulating level of blood nitrates, which then get broken out into nitric oxide in your blood vessels, which then cause the blood vessels to open up and dilate, basically, so it improves blood flow and circulation. So that's supposedly the benefit on performance, because if you've got better blood flow to the muscles, you get better oxygen and nutrient delivery, then your muscles perform better. So that's basically how that would work. So having I think it's 1.5 or 2 whole beetroots basically blended up, juiced up, and then drinking the whole thing. So not juicing it and just having the juice. I just have the whole beetroots, both of them blended up. They've been boiled, so softened.
I was going to say, are they cooked?
Yeah, they're cooked.
Okay.
Yeah, they're softened. I wouldn't, not with a raw beetroot. That'd be impressive. Yeah, a lot of fiber. But yeah, having that and then going for the run, and when I come back, I'll have like my carb heavy breakfast, which is like big bowl of oats, lots of berries, maybe a banana, some seeds. I do put a bit of protein powder in there as well, just to boost the protein intake. And then about 2.5 hours later, I'll go for my upper body session, which usually be like chest, back, shoulders, arms. And
And yeah, I won't talk everyone through what I do, but it's quite general sort of upper body workout, and then stretch afterwards, and then then get on with the rest of my Saturday, whatever it will be. But typically, I will train weights maybe 3 to 4 times a week, depending how I'm feeling. And running, I tried to balance it by doing it 3 times a week. So on the weekend will be a longer sort of easy run, and then during the week there'll be 2 runs. One of them will be the sprint one. So it'll be on a day that I'm not sore from legs, because I can't do sprints when I'm sore from legs. There's no way. And then the second one will be sort of like a medium tempo sort of run, where I'm not sort of going too easy, but I'm not also sprinting all out either. It's sort of like a good pace. And I found that doing those like 3 runs was really good. That was like, especially when I was building up the half marathon, that's what I was doing. And I actually carried on doing that up until sort of January-ish, and that's when like my groin started playing up. So then I came down to only doing sort of 1 run. And then February and March have just been terrible, because every time I try to run, I try doing a 5k the other day, it just felt something in my groin again. So still trying to figure this little injury out. I think I probably need to just give it some rest, because what I haven't done is, I'm the worst at taking my own advice again, which is, I always tell people you should listen to your body. Yeah. But the problem with people that just love exercising is they're very bad at listening to their body.
We all are, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you love exercising so much, you end up just pushing through it and going, I'll be okay. I'll be able to do this. I'll be fine. Like, even now, I'm trying to figure out what exercise I could do that won't make the groin injury worse. Like, doing stuff like leg extensions and leg curls instead of one plain movement. So I'll probably be okay doing that. But yeah, it's just...
It's literally the hardest thing to do, isn't it? Is that rest, let today be a rest day.
Yeah.
For a lot of people who are really active, a rest day isn't actually a rest day. They'll put something in there that will be, less intensive than what they're used to doing, but it still won't quite be a rest when you're not very good at that. It's really important to do the rest.
It's really important, the rest, because that's when your body recovers. That's the thing. Like if you especially if you're both wanting to strength train and run, if you're not allowing your body enough time to rest, sleep is the biggest thing I find. Like when my sleep suffers, especially like winter months was the worst. Like my circadian rhythm goes all over the place during winter. If you're not sleeping kind of 8 to 9 hours, and by that I mean at least 9 hours in bed or 8 hours in bed and sleeping those 8 hours, I found that I just wasn't recovering. And that's when I was getting more injuries and niggles and all these things, because the fatigue of training just racks up over time, and your body will just at one point go, that's enough fatigue now. You're just gonna now be injured. And so sleep is one thing that's completely overlooked. And then nutrition is definitely the other thing. So if you're not eating enough calories, if you're someone that's always kind of been like, I want to stay trim, I want to stay lean, but then you're trying to like also strength train and run, and you're not eating enough food, then you're going to run into trouble as well, because you're not fueling your body. So 2 really important things there: fueling your body with the right foods, and actually getting the sleep you need to recover.
You're obviously on the upper end of the fitness scale. For somebody who might want to have a kind of a moderately fit and healthy lifestyle, so somewhere you're 10, but obviously somewhere like number 5, what would you suggest that kind of week look like? Yeah. So for example, I love running. So if I wanted to supplement my running with some strength training, what might that look like for somebody who's obviously not aiming to be a bodybuilder, but just wants to kind of support their running?
Yeah, I would say just maybe even just 2 sessions a week, where you do a kind of a full body sort of strength training session, and just focusing on compound exercises. So again, these are exercises that use multiple muscles in the movement. So, if you were to go gym just once or twice a week, let's say, or twice a week, let's say, and split it up so it's away from the days that you're doing your hard running, the exercises you choose can't be stuff like standing in front of a mirror and doing bicep curls, because it's just not going to be useful for you. But actually doing stuff like barbell bench press, or even dumbbell pressing just for your chest muscles, doing bent over rows for your back, doing kind of pull-ups or assisted pull-ups. So a lot of people can't do pull-ups, but doing assisted pull-ups really works, just to work the back muscles. Doing sort of lunges, or for legs, you really want to do a kind of movement that hinges, so like a Romanian deadlift or deadlift. You want to do something that challenges your quad muscles, like a squat or a lunge, and like maybe a thrust as well for the hips and your glutes. So as long as you're doing 3 sort of those kind of exercises for the lower body, and actually working the calves and the front of your calves also helps as well. So it's sort of organizing the workout where you're going to get those different challenges in those 2 times a week. And you don't want to be doing sets and sets and reps like you see bodybuilders doing, because you're not going to recover from it. Right. And it's not going to be a good use of your time either, because if you're in the gym just doing loads and loads of sets of the same exercise, you're just kind of wasting time. So even sometimes doing 2 sets of an exercise can be enough if you do those 2 sets really hard. So
less is more sometimes.
Sometimes less is more, but also it's the intensity of the workout as well. So, if you're doing a repetition and you can only do a certain weight for, let's say for 8 repetitions, and someone put a gun to your head and said do another repetition, you can't do that another repetition. That's training to failure, which we tell people that if you're trying to build muscle, you want to be training around that sort of thing, which the normal person just doesn't do. Like even I won't do that all the time, because it will over time it will leave you completely knackered. Mm. So stopping like maybe 1 rep shy of that might be something that's better. So gauge it by your kind of rate of exertion. So how hard do you think this set was? Sometimes doing just 2 sets of that per sort of body part for that session can be sometimes enough. But overall during the week you want to get a good number of sets in to really see a discernible difference. And tracking the workouts as well. So if you're going gym twice a week, but you're lifting the same thing that you were week on week, are you really getting any stronger? No, because you're lifting the same weight, Sure. So you want to make sure that actually, if you're gonna make a routine where you're doing sort of compound movements that work multiple muscles per exercise. So doing something like a squat would work your quads, your glutes, and your hamstrings a little bit. So it's working multiple muscle groups. Rather than just sitting on the leg extension machine, because that's only going to do your quadricep muscles. So, do you see what I mean by that? So yeah. Splitting it up, and then so figure out a plan that you can do twice a week, and then making sure that as the weeks go by, you are seeing some progress in the weights you're lifting. And if you're not seeing progress, ask yourself why that is. Is it because you're doing too little? So is it too easy? And actually you need to just be lifting a slightly heavier weight, which is a bit more difficult. So then you do get stronger, and that you're doing that kind of progressive overload where you're getting stronger over time. Or is it the fact that you're doing too much? Is it the fact that you're trained too hard in the gym, you're running too hard, you're not eating properly, you're not sleeping, you're not recovering? There's always one of the two. Either you're doing too little or doing too much. But tracking the progress, just like you do with running. With running, we track how many kilometers you're getting done each week, and you're aiming to kind of get 10% more week on week. If you don't track that and you don't know that, how do you know you're progressing? If you don't track your times, how do you know you're getting faster over a certain period of time? So same thing with weights, really. I tell anyone, track everything, because that will help you know whether you're doing the right thing or not. And yeah, for the general person, I would say two lots of resistance training sessions per week is probably the thing to aim for, and it's what you can donate your time to. And they you don't have to be in the gym for like 2-3 hours either. I'm only in there for an hour. And I recommend people do at least, I'd say 40 minutes to an hour. But if you can only do half an hour, then only do half an hour. That's fine. If you can only do 20 minutes, then just do 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be a sort of all or nothing approach. You can't just be like, oh, because I can't go in there for an hour and a half, I'm not going to go at all. If you can just make a half an hour session, just make it a little bit more intense, and you could definitely do it.
Just use the time you have, I suppose.
Yeah, use the time you have and just be efficient. And if you're having trouble, reach out to someone that, reach out to personal trainers. My girlfriend's a personal trainer as well, so she's more than happy to, take on more clients. But just reach out to someone that knows what they're doing and is willing to help you. And if you have to pay for it temporarily, even, that's a good idea, because some people do need professional help.
And all this really needs to be supplemented with, as we've talked about, a good diet, doesn't it? Because it's all very well doing the fitness, but if you're not backing that up with what you're eating and good nutrition, then you're not going to see the benefits. What would you say to somebody who maybe eats an omnivorous diet and wants to make the steps towards plant-based? Yeah. How would you recommend that they kind of take those first steps?
Yeah, I mean, I always ask people what the reason they want to do it first as well is. So just gauging someone's motivation, really, because if someone's in it for their health, then you can sort of direct them that way. If someone's just in it because of ethics, then you know how you're going to be speaking to them. But definitely the best way to start is to research and learn about what foods are going to be replacing the kind of foods you're eating. So planning and learning. I'm a huge fan of just educating somewhat yourself on a topic before you just dive into it. Because I think there's two ways of going about something. If you either just dive into it and then think something goes wrong and then you think you failed, so you just bail, or you kind of do your research at a time, learn a few things before you go in, have a bit of a plan, and then a bit of kind of what would happen if this goes wrong, and that way you're sort of more prepared for things, which I prefer people do it that way. I did it the first way, but luckily it didn't. It worked out for me. I kind of just went in and just went vegan overnight. There was no planning involved, nothing. I went literally July 7th, 2017. I just decided to go vegan overnight. And yeah, it worked out in the end. So I tell people, plan it properly, educate yourself. There's loads of good books out there. So if someone reads and they like books, then I say, there's a few that I recommend. There's The Plant-Based Athlete by Matt Fraser and Robert Cheek. There's Plant Powered Doctor by Dr. Gemma Newman. There's Eating Plant-Based by Dr. Shireen Kassam and her sister, I think Zara Kassam. They wrote that book together. There's The Proof is in the Plants. That's by Simon Hill, nutritionist and physiotherapist. He's got a really good podcast as well, called The Proof. So that's really good if someone likes podcasts. And plant-based health professionals also have their own podcast. It's called In a Nutshell podcast. So again, educating yourself with all these sorts of things, books, podcasts, online, is the best way I find to go about it. And then there's the websites I recommend people are, there's Challenge 22, which is it's literally a website that's dedicated to helping people to go vegan for 22 days and try and set up kind of nutrition plans for people. And there's lots of advice on there, helpful links at Challenge 22. Veganuary has a really good website. Obviously, you don't have to try and go vegan in January alone, but going vegan in January for Veganuary is where a lot of people get started. So they've got a really good website full of resources to help new people. And Plant-Based Health Professionals also has loads of helpful fact sheets on plant-based nutrition, where to get certain vitamins, minerals as well, because lots of people have questions about this sort of thing, like where am I going to get iron from, where am I going to get calcium, all of this stuff is on Plant-Based Health Professionals, and it's also discussed in their podcast as well, which is called In a Nutshell. So yeah, I think just arming yourself with the information is the best way to start on a plant-based diet. That's the first thing. But the next thing is, if someone's going to do it slowly and sustainably, it's switching out certain things meal by meal. So I had a friend that actually went from really omnivorous to cutting his meat intake down, then going down to just kind of eggs. Then he went vegan. So he sort of took out bit by bit different things and replacing them with something. That way he wasn't sort of overwhelmed by doing it all in one go, which some people can become. Obviously, if you're going into veganism for ethics, you might want to just go all in the start. That's what a lot of people do. But if it's something that we're telling people to do for their health, then switching out, let's say, a certain meal for a replacement and seeing if that works for you. An easy one is like scrambled eggs, switching that out with for scrambled tofu. Learn how to make a good scrambled tofu, and you just got a high protein meal with lots of healthy fats, zero cholesterol, very little saturated fat, if any, in tofu. So it's a really healthy replacement. And I find that's a really easy one to do for people. And then, in a curry as well, if you're used to eating chicken curry, then actually making tempeh curry instead. If you eat steaks, then, I don't know what to do with that, because plant-based steaks, there are kind of alternative meats and stuff that people can try, but otherwise, just eating tofu instead, or eating tempeh instead, or eating sort of seitan if you're not intolerant to wheat or gluten. Sorry, if you haven't got gluten allergy or celiac disease, then having seitan is a good kind of alternative meat replacement, which is also relatively healthy because it's made of sort of minimally processed plant food. It's really high in protein as well. So finding replacements for the stuff that you were eating before is a really, really easy way of going about it.
It's fairly safe to say as well, Minil, isn't it, that generally people who go plant-based for their health naturally then understand and learn a lot more about the ethics side of things. And most of the people I've spoken to, kind of certainly in the running sphere, have said, once they learned about what happens, to animals and how they're produced and the horrors that go on, there's no way they'd ever go back. Do you feel like you've You've become almost an accidental activist, or was that something you always wanted to talk about?
For me, it was purely ethics. I didn't become vegan for health. So for me, it was, I saw like a really horrific video. It's this whole story of how I went vegan is interesting in the first place. Like I went to an animal sanctuary when I was still eating meat, and I helped out at a sanctuary in Denmark for a day. It's called Fields of Freedom, which is a really nice name. Then I kind of was like, I love animals, but I eat meat, and this whole moral quandary was going on. And then I watched a video online on YouTube. It's called The Greatest Speech You'll Ever Hear. And after watching that, I went vegan overnight. And I immediately was like, I'm ready to learn about why people are vegan. I want to know more. So I watched Earthlings. I watched a video that Earthling Edit brought out called Land of Hope and Glory, which is another kind of UK-based documentary. I watched Cowspiracy. I've watched like Peter Singer's speech. I watched so many different things. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna definitely speak about this. So I was from the get-go very vocal about veganism, because I guess I have a very strong sense of what I think is right and wrong. And I feel like if there's injustices going on, I should want to speak about them. And I thought this was one of the biggest injustices of all time, because like the victims can't talk about it. The animals can't speak up. They can't let us know how they're really feeling. I mean, they scream and they kick and they, we see it. Like we don't see it. The people in the abattoirs see it. The farmers know, but everyday people, it's completely hidden from their view. So you're almost lied to that this is happening. There's like they had that. There's that quote, isn't it? If slaughterhouses had glass walls, that everybody would be vegan or vegetarian. Yeah, they would, because it's true. Like, and it's just hidden from everyone. No one knows where milk really comes from and what it takes to get milk. No one knows that day-old chicks are killed because of the fact that they're just male, and male calves are shot after a few days, and they take, females are shot. Female cows are killed at the age of 6 because their reproductive organs are spent. No one knows this stuff, so I had to talk about it. And I find that actually people that go vegan or plant-based for their health, you're right, because they find out all this stuff afterwards. And it's really interesting because I know so many people that did it for their health first. Some of them are runners as well, like you said, and then they learn about all this stuff, and now they've become activists as well. So it's really good to see that actually, when people do learn all these injustices that go on, it's really good that they do become activists. But yeah, I've been like this since the beginning, I would say. It's just...
And it's that education, isn't it? A lot of people just, like you say, they don't know what goes on. So when you scratch under the surface, it's hard then to look away, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely.
You have a great platform now to talk about it, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I'll have to use it for sure. Yeah.
You're obviously a member of Plant-Based Health Professionals, and that's kind of a big part of the veganism discussions that we've had. And have they helped you in your journey? And they can obviously help a lot of other people on their journeys, can't they, with all the resources that they offer? Let's talk a little bit about them, how you
I mean, they're amazing, and I'm so glad I found them, Plant-Based Health Professionals. So I think I think originally when I went vegan, I think I went on Facebook and I just typed in like vegan, someone told me about a vegan doctors group, and then found that, and it's just literally a group of doctors who are vegan. It's a very small number of them, and then the offshoot of that, like Plant-Based Health Professionals, kind of became like this sort of almost like a community interest group, or like a company. It's like that's kind of headed by a doctor. Actually, she's a consultant hematologist at King's. Her name's Dr. Shireen Kassam. So she's become quite a well-known name now in the UK and sort of internationally as well in the plant-based circles, because she's really sort of brought together this group of other doctors, like nurses, nutritionists, dentists in the group. There's people who are just like patient advocates as well. Kate Dunbar, who's like part of Vegan Runners, she's in that group. So there's a lot of people that have come together now to make plant-based health professionals who they are. And their main soul is just basically, to educate the public, educate other health professionals, educate anybody who wants to listen and learn about the benefits of a plant-based diet. We're all doctors that use conventional medicine as well. we're not saying that you can't use conventional medicine. That we are for that, and we operate like in an evidence-based way. So everything we say has evidence backing it. But I think all of us are quite strongly strongly hold this belief that we're not doing enough to prevent disease. We're doing a lot to kind of just cover it up. Like I said at the start of this podcast, which was more about, we're very good at kind of sick care. We're not very good at sort of focusing on health and the interventional aspects, especially like heart disease, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, obesity. There's loads of things that actually eating a whole food plant-based diet can help with, and that's what they were trying to like sort of promote, whilst also kind of lobbying the government to say, look, you need to subsidize healthy plant-based foods like fruits, vegetables, create an environment where that stuff's the norm, and actually stop giving subsidies to meat and dairy, and stop kind of advertising junk food. And there's so many things that the government are doing. During COVID, actually the pandemic, we actually wrote a letter and made a video to the government, and we're kind of hoping that they would take a stand on like the fact that we knew that a lot more people were dying from COVID if they had chronic diseases or obesity. And actually we wanted the government to make a stand and say, actually, we're going to crack down on junk food and stop subsidizing meat and dairy, but they just ignored it completely. So
surprise.
Yeah, it's the biggest lobbying groups in the country, some of them are like big oil and gas and big meat and dairy. We're fighting such a big fight when you're fighting against these people. So yeah, it's hard, but they're a very, very good group, and they do conferences as well. So I think they've got another conference towards the end of this year. Last year we had a conference as well, which I was fortunate to give a talk on as well. I spoke about the benefits of kind of plant-based protein, which is a big deal for me to actually be part of that and speak. Because 3 years ago, actually, 2019 actually. Just before COVID, they had the first ever plant-based plant-based conference. It was a conference on plant-based nutrition, and it was the first one in Europe that was being held in London.
Oh wow!
And I happened to get a free ticket to attend it. Somebody was giving away the ticket because they couldn't go, and I didn't manage to get a ticket in time. So actually, I just said, "Oh, can I have the ticket?" And they let me have it, and I went.
Oh, I see.
And that day is when I met like Dr. Shireen. I met like lots of other doctors there. Met Dr. Clapper from America. Met Brenda Davis, who's a vegan nutritionist. There's just loads of people there that I'd only seen on like the internet and read their books and stuff, but never met them in person. So it's
all together in one room.
Yeah, it was surreal for me to become part of that. But yeah, they've really sort of helped me understand more about nutrition and stuff. And they even have a course as well, which people can do at the University of Winchester. It's like an online distance learning course on plant-based nutrition in healthcare. So I encourage people to sign up to that if they find that would be interesting for them.
Now, listen, you told me earlier that you first got into running with the 5K during lockdown, and that then you took up the June 5K challenge for running on plants, which is happening again this year. Can we expect to see you doing that again? All injuries aside, and hoping that you're well enough to do it. Will you be trying to beat your 22-minute PB? Yeah,
provided my groin's okay. Provided I'm feeling like I'm able to run at my best, I'll definitely will be giving it a go.
That's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Obviously, we would never push anybody to do anything if they're injured.
No.
Well, it's really important, as we spoke about earlier, really important to rest and make sure you're in good physical shape before you attempt anything like that. But it would be great to have you on board again doing that one and see if you can beat that 22 minutes. That would be great.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely need to get moving. I want to just talk about one other kind of thing I'm part of as well, which is called Climate Games. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of Climate Games. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear a bit more.
Yeah, so Kate Strong got me into this as well. So she's a world record holder in cycling. And she recently cycled around the whole of the mainland of Britain, going kind of all the way from I think she started down near Brighton, or she ended up in Brighton, but she cycled all the way around the coast, all the way up to Scotland, and all the way back around Wales and past Cornwall and back to Brighton. So the whole kind of circumnavigation of mainland Britain. So she got me into this Climate Games thing, which is basically an initiative where you kind of sign up on the app, then you sync it to your whatever's kind of tracking your activity, so smartwatch or whatever, or you can just use the app alone. But then if you track your sort of workouts, like either running, swimming, cycling, rowing, even workouts in the gym or even yoga, if you track these, you can help sort of, I guess the activity can sort of help with,
well, it offsets
carbon. It's offset carbon. Yeah, like so. Yeah, so
you can plant trees. Well,
you can plant trees. You can sequester carbon. You can take plastic out of the ocean. I'm trying to think of there's a word to describe this sort of offsetting schemes. But essentially, you sort of fund those with your activity. So I think it's something that's really interesting. And she told me about it, and then I sort of got involved with that, and then somehow became an ambassador for that as well, which is really cool. It's really cool what they're doing, and it's just amazing that things like this exist, in the world that people can get involved with. So, it's free if you just want to have the app, and sort of you can kind of sign up to do events as well. Companies can also sign up with it and pay for events and hold events through that platform where, they can offer, if you run a certain number of miles or kilometers, you can plant this many trees. So I think right now there's a Move for March campaign. So I don't know when this episode is going to air, but in March, there's a Move for March where if you do 30 minutes activity or plant 2 trees, so you'll take 2 kilograms of carbon out there, something like that. So it's really interesting. And I think more and more people, the more people we get doing this, the more kind of, the more we can actually help to combat climate change. Because that's another thing that, when I'm a vegan, I start thinking about climate change a lot more. Prior to that, it was just something that I sort of heard about, but I didn't put as much thought into it. But then when you end up going vegan, you realize actually the diet you're on is not only really great for animals, but it's really good for health. And actually, it's the best diet for the planet as well.
It sure is.
It's crazy how so many of the world's problems can just be solved just by going vegan. It's just crazy. That's possible. But
the climate games, it's just one more way, isn't it, of doing something positive through sport. And it really is easy to download. I've downloaded it, and whenever you do an activity, it pings up that you've managed to plant how many trees, and it's really good feel good thing as well,
for sure.
Positive for the environment. So
like I'm looking at like if I open up my app now, I've done 92 activities. I've already planted 28 trees, 163 kilograms of carbon reduced, and I've removed 82 grams of plastic, which is not much yet, but it's still better than...
It all adds up.
It all adds up. And if everyone's doing this, then, this adds up to kilograms of stuff and thousands of trees planted. So I think they released their recent sort of impact on their page on Instagram. And it was just amazing to see how much they've actually done, like how many trees they managed to plant. I think... we just need to get more people on it and do it.
Yeah, what a fantastic initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Minil, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Just such a great platform to talk out about, veganism and fitness, and so many people are in awe of you and, your bodybuilding, and it's been great chatting, and thank you for all your tips and advice. I'm sure heaps of people will take this on board. And really good luck with, recovering from the current groin strain.
Yeah.
We hope to see you back in shape, in tune.
For sure, for running on plants. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me on.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to leave a review for the Vegan Fitness Runner podcast. Please subscribe if you don't want to miss an episode. And remember, you can find out more about all my guests and further information on all the topics covered over on the website veganfitnessrunner.com. Thanks again, and bye for now.